Hello, everyone, and welcome to a very special session, Passing the Baton in Business from Father to Daughter. It's my honor to be in conversation with two very accomplished people today, Mr. Sabir Chaudhary, Group Managing Director of Karnapuli Group, and his daughter, Ms. Raima Chaudhary, Managing Director of HR Lines, and also steering the strategic growth and business development for Karnapuli Group. Welcome, both of you, and thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much. A quick introduction before we move to the questions so that our listeners get to know you both. So Mr. Sabir Chaudhary has an established business background. He has an impressive track record in public service spanning 25 years and has excelled in various roles and responsibilities. A graduate of School of Oriental and African Studies, University of London. He holds a joint honours degree in economics and politics and a diploma in law from University of Westminster, United Kingdom, having completed academic stage for entry to bar. As the 28th president of the Interparliamentary Union of the Global Organization of National Parliaments, he is the first and only Bangladeshi to date to have been selected to this highest office of global parliamentary leadership. For his exceptional and outstanding leadership in promoting interparliamentary relations, Mr. Chaudhary has been conferred with highest state awards, Order of Friendship from the Russian Federation in 2017 and from Vietnam in 2018. The first president of the IPU in its 128-year history to be so decorated. As president of Bangladesh Cricket Board from 1996 to 2001, he successfully piloted Bangladesh's elevation to test status and full membership of International Cricket Council. BCB was decorated with Bangladesh's highest national award under his leadership, and for contributions to development of the game, he's the only Bangladeshi till date to be made an honorary life member of Marylebone Cricket Club, Lords, London. He's also been a member of high-level steering group Every Woman, Every Child, a global movement to champion the health of women, children, and adolescents, led by the UNSG, and is currently a member of Global Business Leaders Caucus, an initiative of OECD's Global Partnership for Effective Development Cooperation to realize Agenda 2030. Presently serving his fourth term in Bangladesh Parliament, Mr. Chaudhary chairs the Parliamentary Committee on Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. He's also a member of Parliamentary Committee on Ministry of Planning. Welcome, sir. This is a very, very, very impressive, career track record.
It sounds more impressive when you read it, but in reality.
No, you're just being humble. About Ms. Raima Chaudhary, after completing the renowned International Baccalaureate curriculum and graduating with honors in May 2010, Ms. Chaudhary pursued her undergraduate studies at the University of Toronto. She completed a double major in political science and religion and graduated with honors in 2014. After successfully pursuing a certification of business management from the University of Toronto continuing studies, she joined the family-owned business Karnapuli Group in 2015. Currently, she is responsible for the strategic growth and development of the group's activities in new areas such as retail in partnership with brands such as Skechers, US Polo, etc., as well as streamlining of existing areas of operation in context of implementation and oversight of annual operating plans. In 2020, Karnapuli Group entered into ship owning and acquired the first of its 2 container vessels. Since then, 4 additional vessels have been acquired over the last 1 year, and Ms. Chaudhary is also the managing director of HR Lines, which is a group company that operates the vessels. Currently, Karnapuli and HR Lines are the only owner and operator of Bangladesh container flag vessels. Ms. Chaudhary is also the founder president of Bangladesh chapter of VISTA, Women's International Shipping and Trading Association, and formed in 1974. VISTA is a global organization connecting female executives and decision makers around the world and serves as a connector for its network of more than 3,800 female professionals from the maritime industry. Welcome, Raima, and so good to see you just grow from strength to strength. Just reading about your career is so inspiring.
Thank you so much. Thank you for giving us this opportunity to speak with all of you today. We're excited.
It's our pleasure and privilege, and congratulations for venturing into ship owning and diversifying into this arena, and I'm sure it's as challenging and as it is exciting.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. So, the first question is for you. You are currently serving your 4th term in the Bangladesh Parliament as a chairperson of the Parliamentary Committee on Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. So this seems like a very illustrious portfolio. Could you tell our listeners what does it entail, and how does this impact the country at large?
Thank you. I think, parliamentary committees, for those who are not aware of how the parliamentary system works, basically it's an oversight body. And normally, if you look at the setup of a government, you have the government, which is the executive, you have the legislative arm, which is the parliament, which is making the laws, approving the budget, giving a voice to the people that they represent as parliamentarians, and also most importantly, maintaining oversight. Is the government doing the right thing? Are the monies being spent properly? Are the politics, are the policies appropriate for the times? This is basically the function of the committee. So we hold the government to account, basically. And if you look at the importance of the environment now, it's really come up in terms of importance, in terms of profile, in terms of the amount of time that people spend on it. And of course, climate change is one of the defining challenges of our time. We call it an existential crisis with global temperatures going up. And Bangladesh is one of the worst affected countries because of that, although we have not had anything to do with the problem in the first place because our emissions are very low. The other challenge, of course, is how do you strike the right balance between development and looking after the environment? Quite often development takes place at the expense of environment. So it's, I think it's a very important part of overall governance. And also we as parliamentarians, we get elected by the people. So our ultimate responsibility is to them. So if you're talking about their welfare, if you're talking about their future, if you're talking about their safety and security, this is a very important ministry. So we have a lot of work to do. And in fact, the major discussions will take place in Glasgow very soon. That is the UN Climate Change Conference. And I think that will determine what sort of a world we are going to live in not just 10 years or 15 years, but even next year, because the impacts of global warming are for all to see. And global warming doesn't respect boundaries. There are no national boundaries. If you have a disaster, if you have a natural hazard, it'll hit India, it'll hit Bangladesh, it'll hit wherever. Without any respect for national borders. So this is very much a national issue, and it is also an international imperative and concern. So, and I feel privileged to be able to be in this position where I can make a real difference to lives of people.
Thank you for that, sir. Yes, I think it's a very important portfolio. And as you said, growth always takes place at the cost of the environment. And somewhere you are holding stakeholders responsible and accountable. That's something which must be a very difficult and tricky task. And someone to keep checks and balances on not damaging the environment and ecosystem is something that very few people are, I think, passionate about, or I would say care about, because ultimately people care more about growth and business and money, GDP, all of that. Even as an economy, but to be in such a portfolio, the challenge and I think the passion it requires is something which I think I must congratulate you for. And it's thank you for sharing this with our listeners. Thank you so much. So Raima, the next one is for you. After completing your studies, you joined your family business, which has recently diversified into ship owning. Could you tell us from your experience as a business owner that what are the qualities of a young entrepreneur in this day and age? What must a young entrepreneur possess in terms of qualities for their business to truly thrive?
Sure. Thank you, Sumit. It's a hard question because I feel like entrepreneurs in this day and age are constantly changing, whether it's how they approach business, how they choose to adopt policies into their own companies, or even when they're working with one another. But I think in my short time, the two things that I've learned are most important is open-mindedness and being aware. I think with things that are changing constantly, with technology that's advancing every single day, it's very important to be aware of what is available in the market, but also what what aspects allow you to be more connected to people, how you can reach people further and quicker and better, how your business can grow in ways that are unlike times before. So I think being aware, being up to date in terms of what is new, what is happening, what is available is very important. In terms of being open-minded, I think we now live in a world, where people's dynamics are changing, markets are changing, consumer habits are changing, how people choose to even express themselves and the things that they choose to do in their businesses are so different. So it's nice to be, I think, open-minded because we learn so much from just one another.
Yes, Raima. Yes, thank you for that. I think it's a very fast-paced business environment, and yes, being open-minded and being, technology savvy and ability to network with people at a fast pace and staying relevant, I think is something which is what you want to share from your experiences, are qualities which a young entrepreneur must possess, right?
Absolutely, yes. And I think just the ability to adapt, because when things change,
Yes.
if your business is not adapting to the pace of others, then it's very easy to be, left out of the loop or to miss opportunities that could have come to you.
Yes, the openness to change. Yes, that's a big one.
Mhm.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that. I'm sure all of our, young listeners would be, very inspired to hear this.
Oh, that's very kind of you.
um, so I'd like to ask you, as a proud father and a business owner, how has the business shaped up after Raima, joining the group and taking over the reins, and in terms of her management and translation of your vision into execution, how have things shaped up? Could you share with us, please?
I say that not because Raima is next to me, but I think they have shaped up better than I expected. And in many respects, I feel a little bit guilty because the gradual induction into business didn't really happen with her. So, it was almost like baptism by fire. I mean, she had to start running before she could walk. My politics and other commitments,
Wow.
took up a lot of my time. So it wasn't really a very phased, very structured, a very disciplined entry into the business. And also, when I think back, I think as a parent, I was never focused on training her for business. I wanted her to be a good human being. I think that was more important. So it wasn't, when you talk about passing the baton, it's really passing on a baton, not of commercial interests, but of values, of skills, how you respond to particular situations. I think that's very important. And then the business comes along with it. If you have that broad overall perspective, and you're prepared for life, which is after all, the main objective of education. Unless you're a doctor or an engineer, how much of your academic study do you actually remember? So education is really to train us to solve problems, to respond to situations. So I guess, that part of her bringing up was very sound, and the business was just a natural sort of consequence of that. And I think the way she was able to grasp, I had concerns because, ours is like the business was started by my father. It is now transitioning to a third generation. So there are a lot of individuals who have been here before even I came into the family business. So how does she handle the generation gap? How does she relate with the more senior? I don't want to use the term older, with the more senior members of the organization. And in terms of turning the vision into reality, I think she has enriched my vision. I mean, she has added dimensions to that vision, which is, I think, the best way to implement it, because vision is something that constantly evolves. You're not. It's not a flat line. It's a curve. It's there are ups and downs, and I think she has adapted to that very well. And of course, the pandemic, which is where I think I saw most of those coming through, those qualities that I talked about. That's when she was really challenged, because it wasn't just the existing challenges, it was also the disruption, and the logistics sector was, of course, greatly disrupted. It is working from home, completely different sort of mindset. How do you monitor work? How do you assign work? It's easy for someone to be on a laptop at home, but you don't call that working from home, maybe from the employer's point of view. But then you also look at it in terms of monitoring. Is the work actually getting done? And that calls for a completely new set of management skills, a new set of management protocols. I'm very happy that she has been able to respond in the way she has. And it's not just good for her, it's good for the organization, and it's inspiring for other people in the organization. And being able to sort of move everyone as part of one team, regardless of age, regardless of seniority, regardless of where they are, building that team spirit, I think has been very profound, and I'm grateful that she has been able to do that, and proud too, not so much as a business owner, but as a father.
Wow, that's so wonderful to hear. So that's so wonderful, and you said it so well that skills can be acquired, operations can be learned on the job, but being a good human being is something which comes from within, and that's something, as a parent, as you said, have passed on those values. That being your primary concern over and above everything else, I think that is such an important element, to be a part of a fabric of the machinery of the organization. I think human values, we tend to sort of neglect or overlook them or undervalue them, undermine them. But it's so good to hear from you that you didn't have to put in much effort on creating this young dynamic business owner. And having met her a couple of times, I think you've accomplished whatever you set out to accomplish in terms of her being a wonderful human being, Raima. I think the purpose has been accomplished. So that's wonderful, sir.
But then it needs to be passed on to the next generation. So she's about 50% there. So
I think she'll make sure. I think she'll make sure. Raima, what do you have to say about that?
We'll see. I think if I can do enough in my lifetime, then that's more than I can ask for.
Wow. Yeah. Raima, so the next one is for you. Post the pandemic, Bangladesh and Vietnam seem to have emerged as alternative markets to China for importers to source their products. I was reading an article about this, that a lot of importers who are sourcing from China are now looking at Bangladesh, Vietnam, even Taiwan, Korea and such. So how do you think this has impacted the export landscape in Bangladesh? And as a result, how has it impacted ocean shipping?
So I think it's interesting because post-pandemic, China has been bringing in more Bangladesh exports. But this isn't really, I wouldn't say that we see it as a competition or as an alternative, but more so as a partnership. I think, sourcing from Bangladesh is now more competitive, and it makes sense why more people are doing that. But in terms of ocean shipping, and in the pandemic, China still remains the largest source of imports for us through the pandemic. So I would say that there are, of course, changes, and Bangladesh has been able to adapt during the pandemic. The country has done very well considering. And I think the fact that we've been able to stay competitive and not compromise on quality, those are things that have allowed us to still, globally compete and be present in markets such as China.
And I think also, if I may just step in, what Raima was actually talking about the other day, the position of Bangladesh, and this is something that she actually enlightened me on. If you look at where Bangladesh is on the map, this is where ASEAN ends, because ASEAN ends with Myanmar and South Asia begins with Bangladesh. So she was saying, how can we, act as a bridge between ASEAN and South Asia? You have inter-Asia trade. We are looking at trade within the South Asian countries. We are looking at SAARC framework. So I think the Bangladesh's physical location actually allows us to play a very important role as a bridge between the two. And I picked that up as one of her points, when we are discussing strategies for Bangladesh at policy levels, we will try to see how we can leverage that very strategic positioning. So you see, this is again something which we didn't never think about. I never thought about it in those terms. And this is where someone new coming into the game, because they don't go on the basis of assumptions. They try and look at it, everything, throw everything up in the air and see how it falls down. So I think this has been a very valuable insight. And I think it shows her maturity, that she's not just looking at Bangladesh, but she's looking at the bigger picture, which I think is, another important element for any entrepreneur, is to have that the global vision and try and see a bigger picture, and then identify the dots in those pictures and see how you can help to connect them.
Yes, and yes, as you rightly put, Bangladesh is a very strategically placed as a hub for sourcing, and for your business to recognize that and leverage that is something very important. And yes, it takes farsightedness, and I'm sure, Raima, has your company sort of benefited from this surge in exports, with Bangladesh gaining momentum as a sourcing hub?
Yeah, I would say absolutely, because one thing that this pandemic has, it's of course devastated so many businesses and so many industries, but it's also given Bangladesh the chance to prove the quality of the work that we do, and prove the consistency in our exports. I think if anything, it adds to our global credibility. It ensures countries that they can really be happy with what they invest in, and it's allowed us to compete at a global level in ways that we haven't before.
Wonderful, Raima. So for you, I think the pandemic has not just been like a training ground of sort of getting into the thick of business, but also an opportunity to sort of enjoy a market high and kind of leverage that. It must have been it must have been very, very exciting and very exhilarating.
I think, more so than a market high, it's a lot of pride that we have for our country, because there are many things that work against a country like Bangladesh. My father was referring to climate change in the beginning. We have many limitations as a country, but when you have the opportunity to really put yourself out there, I say you as in Bangladesh, it's really rewarding to see that there are people who are listening.
Yes, there sure are. So I wanted to hear from you about, having a family member at the helm, is all about loyalty. So that's one of the advantages, loyalty. So family dynamics inspire loyalty. And, I just wanted to know if at all there is any downside to it. A downside to having a family member, but now that you've spoken about Raima and what she adds and contributes to the business, I don't even know if this question is relevant, but I would like to know if at all there is.
There it should be an open conversation, and it's good to hear both sides.
I think the family aspect is particularly interesting because in our case, of course, it's Raima and my son Hamdan, and I have another son and daughter, Raj and Alicia, who are also there. But primarily, they are the two, Hamdan and Raima, are now fully in this business. And so what I would say is that you shouldn't also be blind. Loyalty doesn't mean being blind. So you also have to have other factors. You have to have dynamism in an organization. You have to have a corporate structure. One of the challenges that we face in Bangladesh, and I think this is also true of other countries in South Asia, is that how do you transition from a family-owned and managed business into a corporate entity? This is always a big challenge, and the transition is not an easy transition. So I think there, yes, you can recognize loyalty as part of the continuity process. But I think when you're looking at actually structuring it in corporate terms, it calls for more than just loyalty. It also calls for a vision. It also calls for that ability to implement schemes. So I wouldn't call it a downside. There is no perfect approach in anything. It's always a mixed bag. And I think it also depends on the individual. Now, if I, as a father, had felt that there were shortcomings in Raima, which would not allow her to take on this responsibility, then, it is incumbent upon me not to push her to that stage. So that's why I said loyalty shouldn't be blind. Because she's my daughter, she has to be thrust in, even if she can't do justice to herself.
Yes.
That's very important, for a parent to make that call. And but fortunately, in Raima's case, and I'm sure also in many other cases, you will have a situation where with time you feel increasingly confident that they will be able to take this whole process forward. But in the event it doesn't work out, and it can happen, maybe your son and daughter, you're a successful business person, but they may not have an interest in the family business. But that doesn't mean that they are not successful. They should be able to pursue their own ambitions and their own aspirations. So I think for a father to make that judgment call is also very important. If I felt this was not Raima's cup of tea, I would actually not insist that she be here.
Yeah.
Okay, do whatever you think is best for you, and where you feel you as an individual, as a human being, you can flourish and do justice to yourself.
So a very fair and unbiased assessment of, her capabilities, one, what's good for her as an individual and as as a professional, and what's good for the organization. That's something I think you, not just as a parent but as a business owner, would have made a very fair and unbiased assessment of that. That's what you're saying, right?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
You should be a parliamentarian also.
Yeah.
You express it so well.
Thank you. Thank you for that. We can, Raima, let's talk about it after the conversation.
No problem.
All right. So, Raima, this one, I've been wanting to hear from you on this one. So, these days we see more women like you coming into the front line in leadership roles and, acting as role models for the young generation. And we also see open-minded men and women in the industry who understand that diverse businesses have a greater chance at success. So what is your take on having a diverse workforce in your company? And do you make hiring decisions and strategy with diversity as one of your criterion?
I think diversity is something that I've seen in my times in the last 5 or 6 years. It can easily be the greatest strength in your company. I think the more diversity you have, and that's just not gender, but also, of course, more women, but more women from different cultures really adds to your experience. I think it really enriches the way that a company functions and the way that employees can work with one another. I think, when you grow as a team and you have diversity on your side, it makes problem solving, but also advancing equally meaningful, it's really important to have, I think, in a company. So I would say that we definitely do make hiring decisions based on diversity, equally so based on talent. But I think it's important to, have representation. It's important to hear from all sorts of backgrounds and all sorts of people, because everybody has a different experience. Everybody has a different approach or a different solution. And if you are able to really come together and complement that and, present it in an organized way, I feel that it can do wonders for not just your business and, the success part of it, but also as people working together. There's so much that we learn from each other every single day. And I think that's a really special thing to always have and hold on to.
Yeah, and that's so good to hear, Raima. I wish more companies have this outlook towards having a more diverse workforce, because it contributes so much to the DNA of the organization. And and I'm not only talking about gender diversity, there's cultural, there's socio-economic diversity, right? And you as a business owner being open to create and pick up from every part of the spectrum is a very large quality, which will enrich your business and you at the end of the day. So I'm really hoping that all our listeners are picking up from this and and very few companies have diversity as an agenda. I mean, with Sanjam doing all the with so much work, behind the scenes and the front line, I'm hoping that in India more companies are more conscious about hiring with diversity as a criterion. But slowly, I think you and so many others setting an example will bring the change that we are waiting to see.
Oh, no,
Rama,
thank you.
why don't you talk briefly about, that you're working with that French NGO who are getting people from the slums to
Right.
come.
Yeah. If
And
I
I think
can.
that'd be an interesting.
Sure.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that you mentioned that. There's a company called LP4Y, and they're actually a global NGO that's based out of France. But it's interesting because the work they do is they go into different countries, and instead of the standard very westernized approach of an NGO, which is, I mean, in the nicest way possible. I don't mean to offend anybody, but you kind of show up into a country and you do express values or strategies or policies that may not necessarily apply or be helpful on the receiving end. It's a very westernized approach. But what's nice about this company is that they actually, or this NGO, I should say, is that they actually come in and they focus very heavily on training. And training in the sense of actually helping you, prepare for your career. So it's nice because they go in Bangladesh, they're working with a few different slums, and they'll go in and find, people that have just finished high school or are, in the college entry or have just finished college and are looking to start their career path. And, they'll spend lots of one-on-one time with them in terms of guidance, in terms of counseling, in terms of, this is, what it's like when you are actually interviewing at a company or at a corporation. So they're able to, list the places they would like to work or like to, expand their future. And this organization or this NGO will actually help them link up with existing corporations. If not corporations, it can be anything. It can be wherever they want to work, whatever industry they want to work in. And they're actually able to go and interview at those HR departments and have, somewhat of a real life experience in terms of what people look for when they're hiring, what kind of questions you may be receiving. So I think, it's really nice because it gives people the opportunity to actually see what it's like. It's very easy for, us to think from companies that people will just have the experience and they should be doing a good interview and that everybody has those skills or everybody carries good speaking skills or good interview skills. But at the end of the day, there's so much training that is necessary. And for people who don't have equal access or equal opportunity to actually, go and see that this is what it's like when you're applying for a job. It's a really nice way of linking communities together. It's a nice way for companies to also, stop and reflect and think that, there are things that corporations should also be adapting to. It should be more accessible. There should be more training programs. There should be more internships, for example, because when you're young and you're looking for a job, it's a hard market anywhere in the world. It's, if the cards aren't in your favor, sometimes it's very difficult to progress in the career path that you may want. It's not always based on virtue or talent. There are many limitations or restrictions that people of different socioeconomic backgrounds and cultures, and of course, gender face. So it's actually a very interesting, it's very wonderful work that they do, because instead of focusing on the politics or the social aspects of it, it's just very simple and it's just very dedicated to getting youth the training and the guidance and the counseling that they would ideally need to start their career.
That's wonderful, Raima. Thank you for sharing that. So a company that's focused and so dedicated to this cause. I'm sure there are very few, and and it's so good that you're associated with them and working with them closely to create better opportunities for youth.
No, absolutely. And I would be happy to share on the name of them, of the NGO,
Yes.
and the details, because they are based, I know that they do a lot of work in India. And they link up with lots of big corporations, and they're very diverse in who they approach. So I think it's something that everybody can spend a little time with.
Yes, we'd love to connect with this company. So yes, let's do that offline. If you can
Absolutely.
you'd be so kind as to share the
No,
coordinates. Yeah.
of course.
Okay. So, sir, now we just, I mean, the last two questions of this session. So we'd like to hear your thoughts, sir, on equality and a diverse workforce. Static.
I think as you have already mentioned and as Raima was elaborating, diversity
Yeah.
is strength. We have to see that as a strength. It's an asset. It's probably one of your more important corporate assets. So it's not just, the degrees, the professional degrees that individual staff members hold. It's the various backgrounds that they come from. And you're trying to get that perfect mix so that, this optimum mix will then drive the company forward. And what I've found is that, when you're talking about women in particular, Raima mentioned openness. I think I have found generally in our organization that women they have an aptitude for learning, which is important, and they're fast learners. So, this is something else that I have found from my experience. I think they also have, and maybe, to an extent I'm influenced by Raima, but I'm sure it applies generally. They have what I would refer to as emotional intelligence. It's not just intelligence, but emotional intelligence. Being able to understand people, not just your employees, but also, your clients, your customers, understanding the market, the environment in which you operate, the ability to connect with that. I think, that is also very, very important. And I think they're much more resilient. They're much more persistent. And we see that across the board. If there is a disaster or a natural hazard, you will find that women are really pillars of resilience. That's where they hold it all together. In our country, when you have a cyclone warning, people move from coastal areas to what we refer to as shelters. And it's women who play the most important role. They are the last to leave the household. And if you then translate those values into business, they are the ones. I'm not saying the ship will sink, but if the ship was to sink, they would, as the captain, go down with the ship. It's that kind of a commitment. So I think that certainly adds value. And so you are, as a company, you're looking to have the right mix of assets. You want to deploy your right assets. So you need to recognize what your assets are. It's not how much money you have in the bank. It's not the returns you're getting on your investment. Human resource is your most important asset. That's where you have the edge over the others. If you're talking about shipping, you're giving a service. Well, it's the same old ship that's carrying 10 different customers' boxes. It's reaching its destination within the set number of days. So where do you make that difference? Where do you add value? So you add value when it comes to your human resource, the way you serve your clients. You add value through IT. So I think this is having that diversity element and having women in business is actually a smart thing to do. It's smart business. And the business case for having women in business, if I may put it that way, because everyone looks for a business case. What is the business case for this? What is that? I think it is so powerful. And I'm sure, research and other sort of studies will also show that. If you look at the top companies in the world, you will find that when there's a woman who is taken over the reins as the CEO, they perform better. So I think it's in the interest of business that we should actually get them involved. If someone is looking at it purely from a business point of view, purely from an ROI point of view, purely from a bottom line point of view, leaving aside the other factors, which in my case, I believe are more important. But for those who are focused just on the commercial aspects and the commercial motives, I think it's an overwhelming case. It's a close case. I don't think it's something that you really need to argue for. Maybe you advocate it, but I think the case has been made time and again, if only we are willing to listen and to see.
Wow, it's a close case. Yes, I love that. And, if I may share a little bit from my experience, I've been 18 years in the industry, and listening to you and Raima, this being a so-called male-dominated industry, and I work in North India, so I've worked in North India for over 10 years. Very few women in the industry, and fewer women, in leadership positions. So for me, it initially came from a place of being taken seriously.
Right.
It didn't start off as being taken seriously, and then I thought I had to put in more work, and I thought I had to put in more effort and seriousness into not just surviving but thriving. It's not about surviving, right? It's about thriving in a male dominated space, and it started that way for me. And I think it's been so beautiful, because having met people, so many people, open-minded people like yourself, and now you're saying that it's a closed case, and it's like music to my ears. And so the accountability, I think, increases. I don't know, Raima, if you agree. In my case, that's what happened, because it starts from a space of proving yourself, but then it's about thriving also, and it's about creating a niche while thriving and while taking your business to greater heights. So I don't know if you relate, but this is how it was for me.
No, I absolutely do agree and relate to your experience. I think it's something that you need to prove initially, but then you also, as a person, and for your career advancement and your goals and your aspirations, it absolutely becomes about thriving and pushing the agenda forward.
Yeah, this is wonderful, and our listeners will be so happy to hear this. Globally, people listening, and we are talking about a business case in diversity, and you and Sir have said such beautiful words. So thank you for that. And now for the last question of the session, it's for you, Raima. Would you like to tell us something about your personal goals and aspirations? And we want to know that, was it always your dream to be at the helm of your family business? Did you plan it that way?
So to be completely honest and to share a little bit about my experience, I did not actually think that I would be at the helm, or that I would be in the family business in the capacity that I am. I was finishing school. I finished university. I had done another year of school after that and studied business management. And it was so Hamdan, who is my older brother, he was already living in Dhaka, and we're very close. We've grown up together. We're friends, we're family, we're everything in between. And when he had moved back, it started to register more for me that, okay, this is an interesting opportunity. But I will say that I think what really changed, or when the tipping point, is when I first moved back to Bangladesh. I was very lucky that I had both sets of my grandparents, and I think I come from a family of matriarchs, as wonderful and guiding as my father is. We have very strong women in our family, and I think what was very clear to me is that I was very blessed and very lucky to be in a position where I didn't have to fear being a woman, and I could do the work that I wanted to, and also, include other people, or have an agenda that would push forward not just diversity, but just, giving women the chance, giving women the opportunity to join the workforce, to not necessarily have kids, or not necessarily to, raise a family, but to work and to do work that's meaningful. So I didn't ever think that I would be living in Bangladesh or for as long as I have. But it's the most rewarding thing that I've done. And I have absolutely no regrets. I think we have one of the youngest populations in the world. We have one of the smartest populations in the world, and we're here to stay. So I would say those are, in short, if I would say are my aspirations, those would definitely be it, to stay and to keep, to be in a position where I can maybe change a few lives. That's more than enough. And women's lives specifically, it's the most rewarding thing.
Wow, yes, thank you, Raima. I'm sure you're already doing that, and I'm sure you'll create more of that, for women, and not just women, but young entrepreneurs, with your mindset and Sir's, visionary thoughts. You both will create so much change, and in the industry, which and coming from a political background, that I'm sure adds so much to the business in terms of environment, in terms of the ecosystem, protecting and preserving the ecosystem. And this has been such a brilliant session. I'm sure our listeners, our audience, they are taking away a lot from this session. And as am I, I feel blessed, privileged, and lucky to have met you both. And it's been such a I wouldn't call this an interview. It's been like a heart-to-heart chat.
More of a
absolutely.
conversation, I think. Yeah.
It was a very, very nice conversation. And I think I would just also like to say to Sanjam, when she approached me about Wista, Wista wasn't something that I was completely familiar with. And, Sanjam called me and we met, and it happened so fast and it was so immediate. But I think,
Yeah.
you had referenced role models earlier. You had mentioned how it's so important for younger people to have role models. And I think Sanjam has been mine from day one, and the work that she's connected me with and to, the work that I've been able to find in Wista and the community that we've been able to find, especially in an industry that is so male dominated, has truly been so important to the work that we do every day here. So I just wanted to say thank you to her as well for giving us this opportunity to be here.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, yes.
I echo that. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Raima and sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a beautiful day ahead.
You too. Thank you and take care.
Bye.